Well, we were just talking about the fact that we've got this complex series of files and folders that make up a project. One other thing I'll mention just about this topic, because I'm not sure how it's set up at your school. At our school, all students have what we call their home drive. It's a server where they're saving all these files to so they can access them on any computer in the school. One thing about that is if you're saving Visual Studio projects remotely, and then you're just opening them from that remote location, there are going to be some things that may not work correctly over your network. It's not the, it's the same example here, like a Word document. If I had it out there, I could open it, make some changes, save it, probably no big deal. When I've got this complex series of folders and files, and I'm trying to edit it over a network, that's not the best idea. You should have it on the machine where you're editing it. Now, here again, that situation might not apply to any of you, but I know it does for us here. And so we're always making sure that because students save their projects out to their home drive, and then they have to drag those project folders back over to their desktop to work with them. Another thing to be aware of is when I have a folder of all these files. What you don't want to do when you're saving them, because I imagine that some of you are going to be saving them to a little flash drive or thumb drive, maybe taking them back and forth from a computer at home to school to kind of do some things with them. Make sure you don't drag one project folder inside of another project folder, because then you'll have such a mess of files and folders that are from two different projects. It's not going to work well. So make sure file management and naming your files it's huge, and it'll save you a lot of time and effort, and it'll save you having to start a project all over again. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that for now. Let's get into here a little bit our integrated design environment here. But here's our integrated design environment in Visual Studio. Okay, and there's a few windows here to note. First one that takes up most of our space right here is the design window. So this is where I have a form or a window that it's created for me right off the bat. It's got the object here that it's made for is this form. I can change the size on it and do some different things here if I want to. All right. Another window here that I'm going to open up is my toolbox. Okay. And actually right up here at the top right corner, there is a little push pin type thing that says auto hide. If I click that, my toolbox is going to be pinned open essentially, okay? And I usually do that when I'm in the stage where I'm designing a form and doing some things with it, okay? Now, when you open yours for the first time, this all Windows forms might be collapsed, and you might have things broken out in these different areas like common controls, containers, all that. Especially when you're not sure how all these different objects and controls are categorized, it's probably really helpful, I think it's really helpful anyway, to just collapse all of these down and open up the one that says all Windows Forms, because now what you have here is all those different objects, containers, menus, they're all in one alphabetical list here, and you really don't have to worry about, looking in one of these categories and not finding something you're kind of looking for. So I would set it up that way for now, probably help you out. Okay, but you got your toolbox here with all these objects. More on that later. Over here on the right side, you've got a properties window and you've got your solution explorer. Okay, now the solution explorer is kind of a little mini window with the tree to your project files. If you added, a program can have more than one window. Many of the ones we build for much of the class are just going to have one window and do stuff, but I could have more than one form or window in a project. And so if I made more, they would show up in here. I could add different resources, pictures, sounds, those kind of things to the project. They would show up in here as well. The properties window is one you're going to work with a lot, okay? And essentially what that happens here, I've clicked on my window or form one over here, and what shows up here are all the properties for this object. So whatever object is selected in my design window, that's where I'm going to see properties for that object. And it's so the properties that an object can have are going to vary. Okay, and there's a lot of them here. Here again, they're in alphabetical order with the exception of names at the top, then everything else in alphabetical order. We'll be working with some of these properties. There's many that we might not ever deal with, and there's a lot of them that maybe you'll start looking at them and teaching yourself some things about them and find out they're pretty interesting. So changing the properties of these objects that we have in our program is something we do. It's a huge thing we do. Depending on your setup here again on your computers, you can move these different windows around and you can undock them and you can make them different size to make your workflow of your environment better for you. You can customize it. I'm going to leave mine and all the demos kind of in this default setting for you and explaining where you are. So you might want to just kind of leave them there for a while till you're comfortable. But like I said, if there's a different place you'd like to have them, if you have more screen resolution or real estate than just this amount of area, it gives you an opportunity to move some things around and be more efficient. Certainly, there's some toolbars stuff up here. You might not have some of the same toolbar stuff set up that I do on my machine. You should have this kind of default top one in there, no problem. One thing I'll point to is whenever we're saving a project, right there, that save all deal, and you can find it under the file menu as well, and you can find save all. But one mistake you don't want to make here is just to save your form. Do that single save thing. We're so used to that in some programs, or that single save thing will save everything for us. We got to save all. There's a bunch of different files and folders associated with this project. When we've done a bunch of work, you hate to do a bunch of work and lose it. So make sure you're doing a save all so all those things get saved. Okay. Another thing to show you here is I'm going to go up here to the Solution Explorer window and see that there is a little icon here that says View Code. Okay, so I'm going to click on that View Code, and you're going to notice another tab just popped into this middle window right here. Okay, so I could go back to my form design window, go back over here, and I'm in my code window. So this is where I'm going to write code for the project. Typically when I'm doing that, I will hide that toolbox there again because it's nice to have more real estate for coding in here. Whether you keep your, collapse your properties window, Solution Explorer, you could pin some of those to auto hide as well. One thing you notice here, there's already some code in this window, okay? It takes code to make that form or that window, and it's done for us by default by the program. So this public class, form 1, and end class, it's important stuff. Don't ever delete any of that as you're doing it, or, your form's going to be messed up. It's not going to be there because it needs that code. One of the first things we'll always do in our code window is make a comment. And you do that by typing just a single quotation. It's right to the left of the Enter or Return key on your keyboard. You'll notice when you make a comment, it looks green. And in your code, you should also put your name and the name of the project at the very top. What did I call this again? My first project, wasn't it? Okay. And the reason for that is, you might submit a project that's just, you give me the executable file and I can run it, see if it runs. But there's also things, there's different ways to code things to be able to run, and some ways are better than others. So I'll also be wanting to look at your code and see what your code is. So putting comments in your code is good form. First thing you'll put in there is the name and the name of your project, and then there's a bunch of other things we'll add as well. Okay, that's the integrated design environment for Visual Studio.